Hey, welcome back to the stash. Spider-Man is important, not just to me, not just to you, but to all of us. He's more than just another superhero. He's not some untouchable god or billionaire genius. He's Peter Parker, a kid from Queens, a nerd, a nobody, someone who was picked on, who struggled, who failed, and someone who felt like us. He wasn't the strongest, the smartest, or the most powerful. But when the world knocked him down, when everything in his life fell apart, he got back up. Because he had to. Because he knew no one else would. That's what makes Spider-Man special. He's not Superman, he's not Batman, he's not Thor or Captain America. He's simply us. That's why we love him. That's why he's endured for over 60 years. That's why his stories still resonate, still inspire, still mean something. So when a new Spider-Man show comes out, his first proper animated series in years, you can't help but be excited. You want it to be something special. You want it to remind you of why you fell in love with Spider-Man in the first place. You want it to be simply Spider-Man. But when it comes to your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, this show, it left me feeling nothing. From the very beginning, this show felt like a chance to return to Spider-Man's roots. The people behind it made big claims, suggesting this would be a special show. A Spider-Man show that finally understood his origins, that would embrace the Ditko era, at least in aesthetics, and a chance to finally bring Peter Parker back to what he always meant to be. But in my opinion, that was all a failure. Not only did it miss the heart, it missed the soul. It missed everything that makes Spider-Man, Spider-Man. Sure, it throws in a few shallow Ditko-inspired designs. You got Scorpion's mask, Peter's outfit, but a costume doesn't make a character, and repeating the word classic like a magic spell doesn't make it true either. Because Spider-Man isn't just an aesthetic, he's an idea, and this show doesn't understand him. And I was really disappointed with the way they were hyping up the show as this comic books 1960s look to it all, when two designs max were based off that era in the first place. That's not a love letter, that's barely even the fucking aesthetics. It's window dressing, it's cheap nostalgia bait for people who actually read the comic books that expect us to see a few familiar visuals and just go along with it. Because you can slap a Ditko design, even saying it is one of those is very generous, on a character, but if you don't understand how that character was actually written, if you don't understand the DNA of those stories, then it means nothing. Plus, for a show inspired by Ditko's 38 issues, I should have remember seeing Nico, Pearl, Tombstone, Amadeus Cho, symbiotes, hell, even Doc Ock didn't have his tentacles. Instead, in this, he was friends with Norman Osborn and they were business partners like the Insomniac games. I also saw an interview with one of the creators of the show, one of the writers, was bragging that how he just used characters that he liked and who we wanted to see interact with Spider-Man, like Nico and such like that. That makes no sense. Don't just shoehorn characters into a Spider-Man show because you like them. Pick Spider-Man characters to be in the Spider-Man show. It doesn't make any sense for half of these people to interact with him, nor even be in his high school. This fell more in line with the MCU, Marvel's Spider-Man from 2017 and Marvel's Spider-Man from 2018. Not the comic books, and that it sucks. I'm sick and tired of so many adaptations just ignoring the source material. We don't have a single proper show besides maybe the 90s and Spectacular that properly dive into those stories, or at least attempt to. And here's the funny part, I called this out before the show even released. On Twitter during a promo when they talk about the 60s aesthetics that Steve Ditko put on the page so well and how they're really going to explore that and adapt it as best as they can. And yet when they said that line, they mostly showed John Romita panels on the screen. And I said something about that. People told me it doesn't matter. People told me I was nitpicking. People told me, oh well, they showed some Ditko artwork too. But to me, it does matter. Because after watching the show, I know for a fact that wasn't a minor accident. That wasn't just an oversight. That's genuinely how they view the Silver Age as a whole. As one blurry, interchangeable mass where Ditko, Romita, and the entire foundational era of Spider-Man just blend in together. And that tells me one thing. The people behind this show have no fucking clue what they're talking about. Nothing about this show is Steve Ditko. Hell, nothing about this show even resembles any real Silver Age or Bronze Age Spider-Man comics. Because Ditko's Peter Parker He wasn't just a nice nerdy kid with a heart of gold. He wasn't some socially awkward, cringy goofball. No, Ditko's Peter Parker was angry. He was flawed. He was a loner. He had a chip on his shoulder the size of New York City. This Peter, the only time we ever see him truly angry is when he's about to kill the Scorpion. And that's not how you write Peter Parker's anger, because Peter isn't some cold-blooded executioner. His anger isn't about violence, it's about frustration, about failure, about guilt. And when this show finally lets him explode, it's not because of his own inner demons, it's because Norman Osborn whispered in his ear. As if Peter Parker isn't capable of feeling rage on his own, as if he can't make mistakes without outside manipulation, as if he doesn't have it in him to be truly painfully human. Man, listen, I get what they were going for. I understand that it's supposed to be parallel to No Way Home, where Toby's Peter stomps Tom from killing the Green Goblin, but the difference? No Way Home earned that moment. Tom's Peter had just lost Aunt May. Not just lost her, she was murdered basically in front of him. It wasn't just a fight anymore. It wasn't just another supervillain showdown, it was personal. Norman took away the last piece of Peter's world, the last connection to the life he had before becoming Spider-Man. His rage wasn't just reactionary, it was grief. It was the loss of everything he stood for. So when Tom's Peter starts beating the absolute shit out of Goblin, and when he's about to cross that line, it makes sense. We believe it, we feel it. And when Toby's Peter stops him, it means something, because Toby's Peter, he's been there. He's been there before. He's lost his Uncle Ben, he's lost Harry, he's lost people he's loved. He knows where that path leads. So that moment, that was earned. Now, let's look at this show and how it tries to do the same thing. Scorpion almost kills Peter in their first encounter. This rematch is supposed to be Peter's big emotional breaking point, his moment of uncontrollable rage influenced by the words of Norman Osborn, because this Peter has never heard the great power, great responsibility line. But instead of feeling earned, it just feels stupid. Scorpion in this, I think, was handled horribly. They took out the J. Jonah Jameson aspect of his story, which is crucial to his origin. J. Jonah Jameson wasn't even in this show. Well, that's so Ditko of this show, isn't it? Anyway, they also took out his real job as a private investigator. That's no longer here. He's just a gang leader. But also, he isn't some long-time nemesis here. He isn't someone who's been tormenting Peter for years. He didn't kill a loved one or take something irreplaceable for him. The big part was that he almost killed him. But even seeing Spider-Man ragefully try to murder someone and scream, "But he tried to kill you and me," it just doesn't work. That's not Spider-Man. It's horrible. It's a character assassination. I just don't know why they're so allergic to the classic origin story, and like why they had to have Norman Osborn say, "With great power comes great respect." Why can't we just have a standard origin story anymore? But I'll talk about that more later. As I was saying, this shows that the writers believe Peter can only express real anger or make mistakes when he's being manipulated by someone else. That without outside influence, he isn't capable of real angst. And if you've actually read any Spider-Man comics, you'd soon find out that couldn't be further from the truth. Sometimes, Peter is actually just an asshole. Because Peter Parker's struggles, his anger, his guilt, they don't come from outside manipulation, they come from within. And when Uncle Ben died, it wasn't just the tragedy that made him sad, it was his fault. He was the one who let the burglar go. He was the one who thought, "Not my problem." And when that burglar came back and killed the one person who was truly like a father to him, that was the moment Spider-Man was born. Because from that point on, Peter lived with the weight of knowing that his selfishness, his arrogance, his flaws had led to something irreversible. That's why he's different. That's why he's not like Superman or Batman. That's why the MCU Spider-Man and this Spider-Man does not work. That is why we care. Because we know that pain. We know what it's like to make a mistake that we can't take back. We know what it's like to lose someone and wish we could have done something differently. And this show, it doesn't get that, because this shows Peter Parker. Uncle Ben dies before he even becomes Spider-Man. So tell me, where's the guilt? Where's the responsibility? Where's the thing that makes Peter Parker who he is? Because it's not here. And without that, you don't have Spider-Man. What you have is a knockoff wearing the costume, a safe, sanitized, hollow version of a character who used to mean something, who used to have character. He used to be someone unique, someone who was actually enjoyable to read and watch. And that's what kills me about this show. It wears the mask of classic Spider-Man. It pretends to be a tribute. It says all the right words, but when you actually look at it, it doesn't understand him. Not one bit. And that leads us to Peter himself. Because man, this might be one of the worst Peter Parkers I've ever seen. And I don't say that lightly. I've seen bad versions of Peter before. I've seen boring versions, annoying versions, but this Peter is nothing. A hollow, empty shell of what Peter Parker is supposed to be. And it's not just that he's badly written. It's that he's a combination of everything that's wrong with modern Peter Parker. This isn't the Peter Parker who stands up to bullies. This isn't the Peter Parker who gets pissed off and fights back. This isn't the Peter Parker who would have 3 women in his house at the same time. This isn't the Peter Parker who struggles with anger and guilt, who has rough edges, who makes mistakes, who actually feels human. No, this Peter Parker, he isn't even a person. Like I said, he's safe. He's sanitized, you could push him over with a light breeze, and that's a problem because Peter Parker isn't supposed to be safe. Peter Parker is supposed to be raw and real. He's supposed to be flawed, messy, complicated. He's supposed to have a rage boiling underneath the surface, and when he's pushed just right, that unleashes. He's supposed to be a kid who, at his worst, can be selfish, petty, spiteful, sometimes just plain oblivious. A kid who's, when he's hurt, he lashes out. A kid who, when he's humiliated, he wants to prove himself. A kid who's simply like us, who's simply human. But this show, this version of Peter Parker, isn't allowed to be anything. He's not angry, he's not passionate, he's not really insecure, he's just more dorky, he's just there. A placeholder, a watered down Disney-approved flavorless imitation of what Peter Parker is supposed to be. And the worst part? This isn't just this show. This is how Peter Parker is written in everything now. It's been happening for years. The edges have been sanded down, the attitude has been removed, the pain and the guilt and the flaws are gone. This design that used to be unique to Peter is now just so unbelievably generic you can't even tell half the time who he's meant to be. Modern Peter Parker has been defanged. Peter has simply lost his backbone. Ditko's Peter was mean, he was bitter. He would rather spit in Flash Thompson's face than be friends with him. He got bullied, but he fought back. He wasn't scared, he was pissed off. He wasn't helpless, he was cocky as hell. He thought he was better than everyone else, and like I said, he was oblivious. He could be lost in his own world and in turn, basically just brush people off arrogantly. And sometimes that arrogance screwed him over. But that's why we loved him. Because he grew, because he had an arc, because he wasn't a perfect, inoffensive little hero in training. He was a kid who had to learn the hard way. When he put on the mask, he had an edge. He didn't just quip for the sake of quipping. He was taunting his enemies. He was mocking them. Because even when he was afraid, even when he was getting his ass kicked, even when he knew he was outmatched, he never let them see it. No, he fought meaner because he had to, because Peter Parker's life was hard, because his whole life he's been stepped on, pushed around, and as Spider-Man, this was the one place where he had control, where he could finally dish it back. That was Ditko's Peter Parker. And this Peter Parker, this modern, softened, focus group tested, endlessly inoffensive Peter Parker, he's got no edge. No bite, no fire, nothing. Even Insomniac's Spider-Man, who's supposed to be an older, more confident Peter, isn't even allowed to make jokes anymore.
Like a compliment club! Compliments don't hurt anyone, and they're free!
Because, God forbid, Peter Parker actually have a personality. Because, God forbid, Spider-Man actually be funny. And that's what's so annoying about this show, that this Peter Parker, as I said, it is a combination of all his worst modern traits. This version of Peter is a nervous, cringy dork. He's not a loner, he's not rough around the edges, he's not awkward in a way that actually feels real. He's awkward in a way a studio executive thinks nerds are awkward. It's all fake. Just another brand new day sterilized Spider-Man. Another completely harmless version of a character that used to have some fucking teeth. And I'm tired of it. I'm so tired of seeing Peter Parker, one of the most complex, interesting, and relatable characters ever created, reduced to this bland, agreeable, personality-free shell of what he used to be. Because Peter Parker was never supposed to be safe. But that's exactly what they've turned him into. This show does something I hate. It's something that I've been seeing in modern Spider-Man media for years now. Why does every side character need to be extraordinary in the most shallow, artificial way possible? What happened to supporting characters who were special, not because they had powers, but because they were all well written? That's a lost art in Spider-Man media now. We will never see a character written as consistently great as Mary Jane was from the 60s to the 90s ever again. We will never see a supporting character with genuine growth like Flash Thompson had from the 60s to 80s ever again, because modern writers don't care, and that is painfully obvious in nearly every episode of this show. Also, why does Marvel always feel the need to shoehorn civilians into Spider-Man's battles now? Like, a prime example is how Ned and MJ got forced into the final battle in No Way Home. I hated that. Superhero fights should be between the hero and the villain, not the hero, the villain, and the hero's group of friends tagging along. And this show is just as guilty. Lonnie Lincoln, Tombstone, literally fights the Scorpion alongside Spider-Man. I understand it was to display the birth of his powers, but it's still one of the cringiest things for me in this entire show. Lonnie starts off as a genuinely good and lovable guy who, through life, is forced to mix up with the wrong crowd. Okay, sure, that's a story I can buy into. That's a story that has potential, but the problem? You never truly feel the weight of it, because this show turns him into an untouchable, invincible, experienced fighter. Hell, he dodged more hits than Spider-Man himself. And yeah, I get it, he gets his Tombstone durability in one of the episodes during the fight, so Scorpion can't hurt him. But just because he's suddenly durable, and just because he's a football star, does not mean he should be dodging every single attack in perfect synchronized fashion with Spider-Man. And then Lonnie and Spidey land a decisive blow at the same time on Scorpion? It makes no sense, like, at all. Spider-Man used to be the underdog and he used to fight alone, but now he never goes on missions by himself. There's always someone tagging along, or someone guiding him, or someone helping him. It's insulting. I hate to say it, but Disney has killed Spider-Man's independence. He always needs backup, he always needs a team, he always needs a mentor now. Even Daredevil has a random sidekick in this show, and it's not even Blind Spot. Now, in case you didn't know, because the writers of this show clearly didn't, back in 2016, Daredevil had a canon sidekick / protege named Blind Spot, a character made for that exact role that's in this show. But here they just used a random character that I don't even think has ever been in a Daredevil comic before. I've read every single issue, and I swear I can't remember Finesse appearing once. Who the f is Finesse? How on earth did someone even come up with that pairing? But then again, you could ask that question with nearly every single relationship in this show. My bad, I forgot the writers just care more about which characters they like that they can shoehorn into a Spider-Man show as opposed to using actual Spider-Man characters. But poor Blind Spot, like, he never gets any recognition, and this was the perfect opportunity to use him if you're gonna give Daredevil a partner. But of course, they blew it. How I doubt these writers even read the comics. This is like the CW's Flash if it was Spider-Man, and I hate that. Spider-Man stories work because he's alone. Spider-Man stories work because they're about him, finding his way, struggling, and making mistakes, learning, and ultimately accomplishing things because he works hard for it. But when you give him backup, and when you make it a team, and when you turn it into Spider-Man and his amazing friends, you lose something. You take away what makes his story so deeply personal. You take away the effect and seriousness of when his side characters naturally fit into the big climaxes. We can't even have a grounded supporting cast anymore. Just like the CW Flash show, Peter's friends are all obscure superpowered characters from the comics. Hell, even he has a mentor that's his biggest and baddest villain. And then there's Mary Jane, or should I say, the lack of Mary Jane. Harry Osborn in this says, "Go get him, Tiger." Harry, not MJ. Harry. Why? Why is Marvel so afraid of Mary Jane Watson in the big 2025? Why do they keep trying to erase her at every chance? MJ is Spider-Man's heart. Always has been and always will be, but this show, just like the current comics, don't get that. Same with Uncle Ben and the butchering of Peter's origin story. I am absolutely sick to death of that classic origin now constantly being twisted into this otherworldly tale. What has happened to a simple spider bite? A simple story about cause and effect and about upholding your responsibility when you have such great power. Why does this show need to have portals and time travel and symbiote fights with Doctor Strange for his origin? And poor Uncle Ben is slowly getting erased, especially his importance too. Disney's two biggest Spidey projects, this show and the MCU films, have completely ruined the entire point of his character. Hell, the MCU didn't even mention his name. But then in this show, he dies before the bite. It makes no sense. And after the way the finale ended, and after the confirmation that Spider-Gwen will be appearing in season 2, I realized something. I went, holy shit, Disney Marvel is doing a massive take 2 on Marvel's Spider-Man from 2017. This show, Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, is not the successor to Spectacular Spider-Man, it's not the successor to Spider-Man the Animated Series, or even the new animated series in my opinion. No, what this truly is the hidden successor to Marvel's Spider-Man 2017. This is that show all over again. Same Hollow Peter, same Force Tech school gimmicks, same early Spider people showing up before Peter has even found his own footing. He's not even 16. It's not a fresh take, it's not a love letter, just another cheap, empty repackaging of the same mistakes this company has made. It's incredible, like they couldn't actually help themselves. Disney has no idea, zero idea what makes Spider-Man's story special, and after each installment from MCU Spidey or related projects to the MCU, it just proves that point more and more. One season, 10 episodes, and they already had to throw in Spider-Gwen. Ending this show, I thought, okay, it's not the worst thing ever. I like some elements, believe it or not. And maybe, just maybe, it could find its footing. Maybe it could keep things grounded to Peter. But no, he's not even f***ing 16 years old, and we already have Spider-Gwen. So welcome back, Marvel's Spider-Man 2017. I'm being honest when I say this. I wanted to like this show, I really did. I went in hoping for something fun to watch and that at the very least would somewhat capture this character. Something that understood why Spider-Man matters. Something that would finally bring Peter Parker back to his roots, back to the hero we all fell in love with. But maybe that's why this show frustrated me so much. Because every time I tried to look past the creative choices that just didn't sit right with me, something else popped up that pulled me right back out. Every time I thought, okay, maybe this isn't that bad, this show reminded me, oh no, we don't actually understand a single thing about Spider-Man. Every time I tried to give it a chance, it gave me a reason not to. This show failed at nearly every aspect of being a Spider-Man show, and maybe that's the worst part, because in doing that, it continues a trend, a growing, frustrating, painful trend of Disney and Marvel having no fucking clue how to adapt this character. We are at the point where people were genuinely celebrating that Spider-Man was finally wearing his classic suit in the last 2 episodes of a Spider-Man TV show. That's how low the bar is now. But look, if you like the show, if you had fun with it, that is totally fine. I'm not here to tell you what you should or shouldn't enjoy. But for me, as someone who loves this character, as someone who's been waiting for years and years for a new Spider-Man show that actually gets him, this just wasn't it for me. And that's what frustrates me. I want to enjoy Spidey shows, but I just can't. I can't enjoy this one. I believe that Spider-Man deserves better. He always has. And this show, it just isn't it. This isn't Spectacular Spider-Man. This isn't the 90s show. This isn't even the new animated series. This is just a show. One that had potential. One that could have been genuinely something fun and good. But in the end, it proved to be everything that's wrong with modern Spider-Man. Well, since that's over, time to rewatch Spectacular for the billionth time.